So John Gotti got beat up fairly badly by a black inmate named Walter Johnson in July of 1996. His son was recently telling the story on that Multi-Level Marketers podcast, and different people have been chiming in. I did a story about it before, but there's some more information. Is quite fascinating, the whole backstory of what happened. So it's 1992, John Gotti gets convicted of, finally, the feds convicted Teflon Don. He gets life no parole in prison. He shows up at Marion USP, which is, the most secure, other than if you're on punishment and you get sent to the Florence ADX, where the terrorists and people who cause problems in prison go to. So he comes into Marion. Marion's full of Aryan Brotherhood people at that time. The ruling elite of the AB hadn't all been sent to the ADX yet. You had Barry Mills, Tyler Bingham, and other guys. So initially, John Gotti kind of bonds with the AB guys, and Barry the Baron Mills was there. Now, the idea behind Aryan Brotherhood, at least the spirit of it to those that were in it, was more like the Crips than the Mafia. What do I mean by that? It means it's a bunch of tough guys, a bunch of outlaws who band together as brothers and support each other and have a set of rules, but it's not a hierarchy, unlike the Mafia. But John Gotti comes in, and of course, he's a guy who has a lot of experience managing criminals, managing men. The Gambino family had hundreds of members, tens of thousands of associates, and Gotti had managed to rise to the top of that heap, so he knows how to manage people. He knows how to make money. As the story goes, part of what he's telling the AB, he's going to help them get some lawyers. He's going to get them some action. And so time is passing. Of course, whether it is the lawyers just tell him there's no helping these guys or whatever, obviously he's not able to help them. But in the meantime, he's sort of under their protection, which has been going all the way back to the late 70s when the AB was first forming in the federal prison system. In Atlanta USP, they did a couple of hits for the Mafia when they were cleaning up the remnants of the French Connection. They killed Dominic Orsini, and they killed Vincent Papa within weeks of each other in Atlanta USP, and that was both AB hits, though no one's been convicted, but supposedly. So there's a tradition of the Mafia paying whoever in some prisons, like you'll hear different of the old-time guys from D.C., they were paid at times to do stuff for the mob. Mob had a lot of money, so money talks everywhere you're at, and they pay for muscle, which is normal. So he's also consulting with these AB guys. He sees how much power they have in prison, but he's telling them, well, first of all, just constant violence isn't good for business. And now one thing you say about the Mafia, Italian Mafia in the United States is the most successful over a long period of time criminal entity ever. Now, that's not because the people in it continue to be special. When a thing exists for a long period of time, it's because of its structure is good. So, under Gotti's sort of, not that he's telling what to do, but under his influence, Barry Mills, now this is according to John Greshner, who was on the federal AB commission until he flipped. Mills starts taking on more of a Godfather-like. So Greshner, when he ended up testifying against AB when he flipped, said instead of the Aryan Brotherhood, it became the Aryan Barryhood, meaning Barry Mills was turning it into a cult of personality. And Greshner claims that Mills was trying to get him to show people how to make bombs on the outs and all this crazy stuff so that Mills could increase his power. And Greshner claims he only flipped because Mills violated the spirit of what the AB was. Who knows if that's true? But anyways, so AB is influenced by Gotti. They start to become less of a assortment of outlaws riding for the brand and more like the organized criminal entity, which led to its being indicted in '02 and 21 people facing the death penalty. And he also tells them something that they start to use as well. Why does the mafia exist for so long? Well, the mafia is like a religion. Like when you get made, remember, you take the things that are the most sacred. Your mother, because you have to swear. Even it says one of the part of the oath is even if your mother's on her deathbed and your godfather calls for you, you go to your godfather. The mafia family comes above your family. You burn a saint in your hand. So these are Catholic people that you allow the mobsters to go to church and they believe in Catholicism to a degree, but the mafia replaces Catholicism and family and becomes a cult. So if you're a made member of the mafia, that's why it's existed so long. It's a cult, which the AB and some other gangs, if a gang's going to exist for a long time, it has to be like a cult. So again, with Gotti's influence, and John Greshner also claims he's the one who told Barry Mills to do this, they start having court cases. I think Greshner may have actually filed a thing against the federal prison system to make a satru, which is a bastardized version of Norse religion, that these Aryan groups will start worshiping a satru, so they'll have religious protection, and that also, it makes the members think they're not just part of a criminal entity like the mafia, they're part of something that replaces your family. You being a Aryan brother isn't in of itself an accomplishment, and it's something to base your whole life around. So Gotti provides his being there with a guy that was the most famous for sure, and for a couple years was the most powerful mafioso in the country, was very influential on the AB and did somewhat change the structure of them, probably to their own detriment, because in becoming more organized, well, to the detriment of Barry Mills and Bigham, because they got sent to Florence ADX, but that Aryan Brotherhood seems to be thriving more than ever in that whole idea of being a white criminal. But it's more that those white guys and those different Aryan groups, it's more, there is like they'll tell you they're not racist, and maybe they're not racist, but there's like for those that believe in this stuff, there is kind of like a mystical element, or just like it means something to be part of it. So Gotti understood how people in the mafia were controlled. So personal relationships may come and go. I may like you, I may not like you. But if I believe in this thing we're both members of, then I'm more likely to maintain allegiance. So they're buddy, Barry Mills and John Gotti. But whether this happened on its own or it's because Gotti wasn't getting them a lawyer, or the AB in some of the black inmates just put a what's called the jailhouse slow press down, where like I come and threaten you, and then my buddy comes and get off. Al Prophet, get off of him. He's with me, and he pretends to protect you from me, but really we're in league. However it happened, is Walter O. Johnson, who was about at the time maybe 57 now, so this was 30 years ago. So he was in his late 20s at the time. Bank robber, serving 10 years from Philadelphia, though he got arrested in D.C. So he had a D.C. number, so that's why they said to be part of the D.C. Blacks, but he was from Philly. Him and Gotti have some verbal altercation on the floor, or on the tier. Now, a prison guard that was there as the key turns, if you're interested in jail stories, he worked at Florence ADX. He says this Walter Johnson guy was kind of a lunatic, very violent, would pop off all the time, like someone who probably couldn't control himself very well, like way too turned up. Him and Gotti exchange a few words. The next morning, Johnson runs in Gotti's cell, hits him, he sucker punches him. Gotti seems to have acquitted himself, if you're into this type of thing, like if you think it's like MMA, reasonably well. He took the punch, he stood there, but the guy hit him first, and the guy was 25 years younger than him. So the guy bloodied up Gotti pretty good. This famous picture, Gotti had already had blood removed from his face, but He had been cleaned up already. I don't think there's a picture of Walter Johnson. People are showing a photo of a Walter Johnson online, and I think I even showed one in my last story, but that's not Walter Johnson. I couldn't find a picture of him anywhere and no newspaper article or nothing. But so maybe the AB was sort of protecting Gotti, then he wasn't coming through what he was supposed to do with them, so they let the protection off and did a play to scare him, get someone, beat him up. Or maybe Walter Johnson's just an out of control guy. But one more thing about the AB and Gotti. According to John Greshner, their alliance in the joint had repercussions on the street. As a specific example, Gotti was hooking them up with stuff. So why is organized crime so much more powerful than just regular criminals? Well, it's organized. There's a vast network of things you have a connection to if you're a mafia boss. So, a lot of AB guys want to cook METH. Getting a lot of the ingredients, certain glassware, the DEA knows what it's used for. You can't order it unless you have like an industrial lab or you're at a department of a science school at a university. Other materials you can't get. So Gotti had business world connections that allowed AB to get METH making materials. So that at least went on. And he said there were lots of deals that went on. And who knows? I mean, we don't know what goes on in the underworld till it comes to light. Certainly on the East Coast, there's been a lot of cases now with blood gang members and the mafia doing stuff on the street because the Bloods can hold them down in prison. And then, of course, hey, somebody helps you out in prison, you're going to help them make money in the world, or your guys are going to make money together in the joint. So a criminal group with a lot of power and money made up of older guys combining and using a gang, a prison gang or a street gang that has younger people that are more violent but don't have the resources, don't have the knowledge. That makes total sense. It sounds totally believable. Now, why was Walter Johnson so frustrated in prison? I mean, he was coming near to the end of his time. He was maybe 7 years in when he assaulted Gotti. I think he got paroled a couple of years after that. Well, he had robbed a bank there in Philly, and he knew a woman in D.C. He goes to D.C. and he leaves her with some of the money, and then he goes back to get it, and this BITCH calls the police on him. But anyway, so he gets the police called on by this woman that he left the money with. And so he goes to prison, finds himself with John Gotti, all that stuff happens. So supposedly Gotti puts a $500,000 hit out on this guy. And I think that Walter Johnson, after his assault on Gotti, because remember, Marion is already the end of the line. So you do something there, like you seriously assault another inmate, they're going to send you to Florence ADX, at least for a little while, just to get you calmed down. So he gets sent over there, and the long arm of the AB. So, over at Florence ADX there in the late 90s or 2000, when Walter Johnson is there, there's a guard named Joseph Princip. Joseph Princip had been an Army Ranger. He had done a lot of things before becoming federal prison guard. He had started at Lewisburg. He did well there. So when they opened Florence, when did they open Florence? He gets moved over there. He gets named in the 2002 indictment as an Aryan Brotherhood associate and gets taken into custody. He was doing favors. Now, Princip may have just been a guy that got what it says he did in the indictment is kind of minor, but I mean, you shouldn't be helping the AB at all, I guess, like allowing an AB and a MA member to be in a Sally Port with the DC Black or maybe a BGF, and they assault him. But he says it was mutual combat. Per Walter Johnson, though, Supposedly, Princip kept trying to facilitate Walter Johnson to somehow be left in a common area with a couple of ABs so they could hit him because there was a $500,000 contract on him. But they never did. And Princip gets roped up into this indictment and taken into custody. So, and then that's what that is stated by, I think, John Greshner or some of the other informants in the AB case, that Princip was helping them, and that one of the things he was trying to do, though it never came to fruition, was set up Walter Johnson to be hit by the AB at Florence ADX. Walter Johnson paroles. Walter Johnson, I don't know what type of guy he is, sounds totally out of control. Within a month of being out, he's back in D.C. Doing what? Was he going after that woman who turned him in? We don't know. Did he have other relatives in D.C.? I don't know. But he was in D.C. He hops, so D.C. has a subway. He hops the turnstile. He, doesn't pay the fare. There's a transit officer named Morales who approaches him. At this point, Johnson, I think he had committed, or no, I don't know if he had committed a robbery when he was out, but it doesn't matter. He had a gun on him. So fare evading is a misdemeanor. I mean, you'll get patted down at the least and get a summons. He's on parole. He's got a gun. He ain't going. He unalives the transit officer. Obviously, it's something that's a tragedy and also is going to bring the full weight of law enforcement down on you. He gets grabbed pretty quick. He gets put in the D.C. City Jail. While awaiting trial, he gets stabbed 50-plus times in a D.C. City Jail. Now, those that like to believe in the Aryan Brotherhood as some mystical body that has power everywhere think, oh, see, the AB did that or the Mafia did that. Let's use our logic. So Walter Johnson beat up a Mafia guy. He didn't really do anything to the AB. There was just a hit out on him. But what else did he do? What was he in jail for? He unalived a member of law enforcement. And believe me when I tell you, because just like I know criminals, I know defense attorneys, I know judges, I know police, feds, local police I've interviewed. They're just like anybody else. You kill one of them, they might want to get you if possible. And in a violent jail like D.C. City Jail, where there's probably plenty of inmates willing to do a favor, like, trust me, I know about criminals that have hurt other criminals in a jail setting on behalf of law enforcement, or somebody who did something to the family. You rape a cop's daughter and go to the county jail. See what happens to you. You can somehow mysteriously get assaulted. I know about a guy who got thrown off the tier in Michigan State Prison because he supposedly robbed or killed the boyfriend of the daughter of a mobster. That type of stuff goes on. So I think if there was anything other than Walter Johnson just getting himself into an argument and getting himself stabbed, it was the police, not the Aryan Brotherhood or John Gotti. But anyway, Walter Johnson gets stabbed up 50 times, and he ends up with a life sentence right back in Florence, Florence administrative segregation. As for Joseph Princip, that jail guard, so this is kind of one of the new components of the story here, that jail guard Joseph Princip, he ends up, so he's in the AB trial, but like the stuff that he did in that is so ambiguous and so kind of light that I don't think much really happens to him from that, but he gets some charges. It seemed that he was described as a meth freak by some of his coworkers. I don't know if he was coming to work at the Florence ADX methed out. It's like a prison guard to be methed out. As a matter of fact, I think I had, when I worked in the laundry at the Arizona jail, that was the best job. He'd come get me 5 a.m. We'd go through the whole jail and pass out clothes, and be like an hour job, and I was done, and he'd give me food from the outside world. But I swear, some of them days, I could tell he had never gone to sleep before he came to work. What are you up to, buddy? But, well, that would mean he wouldn't be hungry because he would give me his breakfast burrito from the outside world. Oh, I don't want it. You can have it. Oh, thanks. No appetite today? But anyway, so Joseph Princip gets 8 years in the state joint for like attacking his meth dealer and like pulling a gun on his girlfriend. And he gets out in like '08 or something. He was a native of the Bronx. He moves back home with his mother. One morning, he calls a media guy and says, I hereby grant you exclusive rights to cover my police standoff, which I didn't know you could sell exclusive rights to that. He was ranting and, when Obama got elected, he took his clothes off and hung a U.S. flag upside down in his window and stood in the window nude with the flag upside down. I guess upside down flag is a racist symbology. So eventually then YPD comes and Mr. Princip like tapes like he has like I think a blow up mattress that's like partially filled with air and he like tapes it to himself and jumps off of like the 8th floor. But with this blow up thing taped to him, boy, it sounded like some type of drug frenzy. So he lives. Now, I don't know what happened to Joseph Princip since then. He was an Army veteran, so he's getting a pension. And no matter if you commit crimes, it doesn't take your pension away, as it shouldn't. So he had been an Army Ranger, so he would still be getting an income. Princip would probably be in his mid to late 60s now. Sounds like he may not be alive, but he might be. He'd be interesting to interview. Joseph Princip, if you're out there, I got a couple bucks for an interview. Not too many bucks, but a couple. You'd be interesting to interview. Walter Johnson is 57. He's cooling his heels in the Florence ADX. Probably heavily medicated, I would assume. I hope for his sake, because I'm sure that's a true living hell if he's not. As for John Gotti, he died in '02 of cancer. He was never able to get his get back. Barry Mills, of course, was sent to Florence ADX. He got indicted, faced the death penalty, but they took the death penalty off the table. They found him guilty of everything and gave him some more life and sent him back to Florence ADX. So the Aryan Brotherhood trial was truly, it was probably worse than a worse waste of time because it made them more famous. So as the white, it's good that the ratio of black and Hispanic people to white people is going down in American prisons in the sense of it means that there's slightly less black and Hispanic inmates, but the white inmates are going up. So the underbelly, the poorer end of white America is now starting to go in prison en masse. And this Aryan Brotherhood mythology, hopefully, if like an Aryan Brotherhood organized white, tough white man from poor areas type cult organized crime thing like the Italian Mafia becomes entrenched in America, it still won't be good because I always say, there's more, I don't want to say poor, but more struggling or, there's more white people that don't have it easy in America than there is of every other person put together. There's more, 65% of America is still white. So the bottom half of them, 32, 33%, black and Hispanic put together is about 33%. So there's more low end, not low end, I don't mean it like that, but the bottom 50% of the income of white people is about the same amount of people or slightly more than all the black and Hispanic put together of every income level. So this Aryan gangster cult idea gets too entrenched in an ever-growing white prison population. Watch out. But that's the tale of who beat up John Gotti and what happened to him. He was stabbed up, probably because the cops let him get stabbed up, and he's now in Florence ADX. John Gotti is deceased. Barry the Baron Mills died a few years ago. And that's it. Now, profit American dope.